Alright, hello everybody, this is Antonio Wolf. We are continuing A Voyage to Arcturus. We're on chapter 11. On Discord. By the time that they regained the mouth of the cavern, Blood Somber was at its height. In front of them the scenery sloped downward, a long succession of mountain islands in a sea of clouds. Behind them the bright, stupendous crags of Discord loomed up for 1,000 feet or more. Maskell's eyes were red, and his face looked stupid. He was still holding the woman by the arm. She made no attempt to speak or to get away. She seemed perfectly gentle and composed. After gazing at the country for a long time in silence, he turned toward her. "Whereabouts is the fiery lake you spoke of?" "It lies on the other side of the mountain. But why do you ask?" "It is just as well if we have some way to talk. It is just as well if we have some way to walk. I shall grow calmer, and that's what I want. I wish you to understand that what is going to happen is not a murder, but an execution." "It will taste the same," said Tydoman. "When I have got out of this country, I don't wish to feel that I have left a demon behind me, wandering at large. That would not be fair to others. So we will go to the lake, which promises an easy death for you." She shrugged her shoulders. "We must wait till Bloodsummer is over." "Is this a time for luxurious feelings? However hot it is now, we will both be cool by evening. We must start at once." "Without a doubt, you are the master, Maskell. May I not carry Crim Typhon?" Maskell looked at her strangely. "I grudge no man his funeral." She painfully hoisted the body on her narrow shoulders, and they stepped out into the sunlight. The heat struck them like a blow on the head. Maskell moved aside to allow her to precede him, but no compassion entered his heart. He brooded over the wrongs the woman had done him. The way went along the south side of the Great Pyramid near its base. It was a rough road clogged with boulders and crossed by cracks and water gullies. They could see the water, but could not get at it. There was no shade. Blisters formed on their skin, while all the water in their blood seemed to dry up. Maskell forgot his own tortures and his devil's delight at Tydoman's. "Sing me a song," he called out presently, "a characteristic one." She turned her head and gave him a long, peculiar look. Then, without any sort of expostulation, started singing. Her voice was low and weird. The song was so extraordinary that he had to rub his eyes to ascertain whether he was awake or dreaming. The slow surprises of the grotesque melody began to agitate him in a horrible fashion. The words were pure nonsense, or else their significance was too deep for him. "Where, in the name of all unholy things, did you acquire that stuff, woman?" Tydoman shed a sickly smile while the corpse swayed about with ghastly jerks over her left shoulder. She held it in position with her two left arms. "It's a pity we could not have met as friends, Maskell. I could have shown you a side of torments which now perhaps you will never see. The wild, mad side. But now it's too late, and it doesn't matter." They turned the angle of the mountain and started to traverse the western base. "Which is the quickest way out of this miserable land?" asked Maskell. "It is easiest to go to Sant." "Will we see it from anywhere?" "Yes, though it is a long way off." "Have you been there?" "I am a woman, and interdicted." "True. I have heard something of the sort." "But don't ask me any more questions," said Tydoman, who was becoming faint. Maskell stopped at a little spring. He himself drank, and then made a cup of his hand for the woman, so that she might not have to lay down her burden. The Null water acted like magic. It seemed to replenish all the cells of his body as though they had been thirsty sponge pores sucking up liquid. Tydoman recovered her self-possession. About 3/4 of an hour later, they worked around the second corner and entered into full view of the north aspect of Discord. 100 yards lower down the slope on which they were walking, the mountain ended abruptly in a chasm. The air above it was filled with a sort of green haze, which trembled violently like the atmosphere immediately over a furnace. "The lake is underneath," said Tydoman. Maskell looked curiously about him. Beyond the crater, the country sloped away in a continuous descent to the skyline. Behind them, a narrow path channeled its way up through the rocks toward the towering summit of the pyramid. Miles away in the northeast quarter, a long, flat-topped plateau raised its head far above all the surrounding country. It was Sant, and there and then he made up his mind that should be his destination that day. Taidaman, meanwhile, had walked straight to the gulf and set down Crim Typhon's body on the edge. In a minute or two, Maskell joined her. Arrived at the brink, he immediately flung himself at full length on his chest to see what could be seen of the lake of fire. A gust of hot, asphyxiating air smote his face, and set him coughing, but he did not get up until he had stared his fill at the huge sea of green, molten lava tossing and swirling at no great distance below, like a living will. A faint sound of drumming came up. He listened intently. As he did so, his heart quickened, and the black cares rolled away from his soul. All the world and its accidents seemed at that moment false and without meaning. He climbed abstractedly to his feet. Taidaman was talking to her dead husband. She was peering into the hideous face of ivory and fondling his violet hair. When she perceived Maskell, she hastily kissed the withered lips and got up from her knees. Lifting the corpse with all three arms, she staggered with it to the extreme edge of the gulf, and, after an instant's hesitation, allowed it to drop into the lava. It disappeared immediately without a sound. A metallic splash came up. That was Crim Typhon's funeral. "Now I am ready, Maskell." He did not answer, but stared past her. Another figure was standing, erect and mournful, not far behind her. It was Joywind. Her face was wan, and there was an accusing look in her eyes. Maskell knew that it was a phantasm, and that the real Joywind was miles away at Pullingdread. "Turn around, Taidaman," he said oddly, "and tell me what you see behind you." "I don't see anything," she answered, looking around. "But I see Joywind." Just as he was speaking, the apparition vanished. "Now I present you with your life, Taidaman. She wishes it." The woman fingered her chin thoughtfully. "I little expected I should ever be beholden for my life to one of my own sex. But so be it. What really happened to you in my cavern?" "I really saw Craig." "Yes, some miracle must have taken place." She suddenly shivered. "Come, let us leave this horrible spot. I shall never come here again." "Yes," said Maskell. "It stinks of death and dying. But where are we to go? What are we to do? Take me to Sant. I must get away from this hellish land." Taidaman remained standing, dull and hollow-eyed. Then she gave an abrupt, bitter little laugh. "We make our journey together in singular stages. Rather than be alone, I'll come with you. But you know that if I set foot in Sant, they will kill me." "At least set me on the way. I wish to get there before night. Is it possible?" "If you are willing to take risks with nature. And why should you not take risks today? Your luck holds, but some day or other it won't hold. Your luck." "Let us start," said Maskell. "The luck I've had so far is nothing to brag about." "I would say it is." Let's see, stuff to say before this. Do you think the fact that the lake of fire is green means anything?
I mean, it must, but I can't think of anything immediately.
I mean, usually, like, in our culture, it's like, what, green is envy, but it doesn't seem like an envy-related thing at all.
Yeah.
Green is used for youth, new beginning.
The only thing I can think of is, indicate copper. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know. see rocks towards our summit. Discord is shaped like a pyramid, right? Yeah. Or is the mascot looks curious. Beyond the crater, the country sloped away and the continuous descent to the skyline. Behind them, a narrow path channels its way up through the rocks toward the towering summit of the pyramid. Now, yeah, that seems to be talking about Discord. So interesting, but don't know what that means. Well, I mean, it's pyramid shaped. If it's pyramid shaped, they were in it. Did they even know? Like, wasn't like the pyramid stuff barely like discovered like around the 1920s?
Well, they knew about pyramids. They just it became like widely known in the West in the 20s.
Yeah, because if they knew about, like, for example, like the chambers inside the Great Pyramid, this would actually be quite fitting. It's kind of, the whole sarcophagus thing inside the actual pyramid. They go inside, it's dark. He basically lays down to die. Has an enlightenment experience of sorts. Well, not an enlightenment experience directly, but a paranormal experience. That might just be an interesting historical connection, but not particularly meaningful, I would say, in any metaphysical sense, anyway. Sant, if it's not obvious, land of saints. When we get there, it's going to be quite clear. Renunciants, what would you call them? Yeah, renunciants, basically, like yogi level people, and basically they're modeled after yogis. The fact that women are not allowed might become clear once we get through that chapter. Won't comment on it here. Think of fire, I guess, hottest sea melts. Huge sea of green molten lava tossing and swirling at no great distance below. Green has to mean something. Maybe it's just like it also just might just be due to the youth of the world, because
yeah,
like in Sant they have green snow. Not quite sure why. So it does mean something. I'm not like quite knowledgeable in my color symbolism, so I should look that up. Then again, he's molten lava tossing and swirling at no great distance below, like a living will. Probably because it is a living will. This whole world is weird. He hears the drum taps, which call to him again. His seeing Joywind, I don't know. Well, obviously that's meaningful in a plot sense. In a symbolic sense, I'm not quite sure. Besides the fact, like, I mean, he's still deeply affected by the places he's been. Like, he's up to now, he's still basically not completely aware of how he's being basically possessed by certain ideas, certain forces of the will. I mean, when you think about it, it doesn't quite make sense, right? Like, he knows this person is like Ty Domin is evil as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
And he just sees an apparition of somebody, the first person he met on Torments, and he's like, shit, well, she'd kind of be disappointed. Be like, what the fuck? Why would that matter? I mean, he killed her brother. Well, he didn't technically kill her brother, but he absorbed him. He's not dead, but he's a disembodied living will within him. I mean, either way, it ends up working well. Like, maybe this is just another matter of his luck, which is not really luck. It's kind of clear that whatever's going on, some greater power is keeping care of him or taking care of him. Like the crag thing was not a happenstance thing. That seemed to be basically destined. The stuff that he's dodged seems pretty destined. There's one chapter later on where like he basically goes like, "Yeah, I'm lucky as fuck. I'm just gonna do some random thing. It's just gonna work out," and it does. Yeah. Beyond that, yeah, don't know if there's anything else to comment on. So let's continue.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the green.
So Blood Somber was over when they set off. It was early afternoon, but the heat seemed more stifling than ever. They made no more pretense at conversation. Both were buried in their own painful thoughts. The land fell away from discord in all other directions, but towards Sant there was a gentle, persistent rise. Its dark, distant plateau continued to dominate the landscape, and after walking for an hour they seemed none the nearer to it. The air was stale and stagnant. By and by, an upright object, apparently the work of man, attracted Maskell's notice. It was a slender tree stem, with bark still on, embedded in the stony ground. From the upper end, 3 branches sprang out, pointing aloft at a sharp angle. They were stripped to twigs and leaves, and getting closer, he saw that they had been artificially fastened on at equal distances from each other. As he stared at the object, a strange, sudden flush of confident vanity and self-sufficiency seemed to pass through him, but it was so momentary that he could be sure of nothing. What may that be, Taidamen? It is Hador's Trifork. And what is its purpose? It's a guide to Sant. But who or what is Hador? Hador was the founder of Sant many thousands of years ago. He laid down the principles they all live by, and that Trifork is his symbol. When I was a little child, my father told me the legends, but I have forgotten most of them. Maskell regarded it attentively. Does it affect you in any way? And why should it do that? She said, dropping her lips scornfully. I am only a woman, and these are masculine mysteries. A sort of gladness came over me, said Maskell, but perhaps I am mistaken. So, Hator. We don't get to find out much about him, though. Like, there's a couple stories in this very chapter, which makes him look a pretty cool dude. It's not a spoiler to say this, because we're gonna find out like really quick. Hador is known as Hador because he hated Torments. He realized that Torments was a fake world, a false world, and so he turned away from it. It's also, Sant is the place that he founded, the rules, land of Saint, land of Renunciants. What do Renunciants do? They mortify the flesh. And this is the rejection of this world in favor of focusing on achieving or attaining the other world. As to why these are masculine mysteries and not feminine ones, much more has to be gone through for like it kind of to increasingly be clear what the distinction of the masculine and feminine is in this metaphysics. The effect that he feels from it, sudden flush of confident vanity and self-sufficiency seem to pass through him. Uh, this is something that you find with certain spiritual people. It's kind of a holier than thou attitude of, and not necessarily like holier than thou and like that they care about anybody else and what they think. That's it's in that like they know that they're doing something greater and better than people who aren't doing what they're doing. The vanity and self-sufficiency is that, well, they know that this world is fake. They know that nothing here matters, and so they're fine no matter what happens. So continuing, they passed on. The scenery gradually changed in character. The solid parts of the land grew more continuous. The fissures became narrow and more infrequent. There were now no more subsidences or upheavals. The peculiar nature of the Ifton Marest appeared to be giving place to a different order of things. Later on, they encountered a flock of pale blue jellies floating in the air. They were miniature animals. Okay, sorry. I just think I had an interpretive insight. Okay, going back to the Lake of Fire thing. One, it's right at the edge of the Ifton Marest, like heading out towards it. Given the progression that he's been going through, it's kind of a development of, well, the power of the will. So the will is and like he describes it, like the Lake of Fire is like as if it were a living will. The will is like an all-consuming fire. The greenness, I think, is about like the fact that it is a young world. So it's kind of fitting that at the peak of the will and passion of that sort, actually no, yeah, at the peak of the will, at Discord, it's basically a metaphor of like all-consuming passion. And as they're entering sense, the nature of the things that he's starting to perceive and feel is changing towards this more self-sufficient satisfaction. Which one may say it still belongs to the will, but it's rather than being an immediate will, it's a very mediated will. It's kind of stoicism and all that stuff. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, that's a good interpretation. I'm not going to say it's right. It may not be what he intended, but it's a good interpretation. It's a good thing to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So later on, they encountered a flock of pale blue jellies floating in the air. They were miniature animals. Thaidamen caught one in her hand and began to eat it, just as one eats a luscious pear plucked from a tree. Maskell, who had fasted since early morning, was not slow in following her example. A sort of electric vigor at once entered his limbs and body. His muscles regained their elasticity. His heart began to beat with hard, slow, strong throbs. Food and body seem to agree well in this world, he remarked, smiling. She glanced toward him. Perhaps the explanation is not in the food, but in your body. I brought my body with me. You brought your soul with you, but that's altering fast too. So that's interesting. I think your comment on the soul, like, kind of leads me to think that, well, this is a more spiritual, like, world that he's in. He's kind of thinking, like, about this on a physical level. And her first remark seems to be, like, agreeing with that to some extent. But then, like, the thing that you brought your soul with you, but that's altering fast too. It's funny that she said, she doesn't say you brought your soul with you too. It's just like, it's like she's correcting him. You brought your soul with you, but that's altering fast too. Which would make sense. I mean, if you look at how the story is going, like, does it really make sense that he physically came to this place? Is this place really something to be understood in that sense? I don't think so. I mean, like, is he physically there? Well, it seems he's physically there in the usual ways we think about physics, sure. But did he get there physically? If you remember, like, the description of, like, the speed of the ship, it goes at the speed of thought. Which is quite something. So I think, like, even if she doesn't know what she's saying, it's like, she's kind of basically said something true. Like, this is not really about something physical. It's like, it's about his soul. Like, all these things that he's interacting with have some, like, deep spiritual nature, and what's happening and what he's experiencing is that spiritual nature rather than some physical nature. So, in a copse, they came across a short white tree without leaves, but possessing a multitude of thin, flexible branches, like the tentacles of a cuttlefish. Some of these branches were moving rapidly. A furry animal, somewhat resembling a wildcat, leapt about among them in the most extraordinary way. But the next minute Maskell was shocked to realize that the beast was not leaping at all, but was being thrown from branch to branch by the volition of the tree, exactly as an imprisoned mouse is thrown by a cat from paw to paw. He watched the spectacle a while with morbid interest. "That's a gruesome reversal of rules, Tiedemann." "One can see you're disgusted," she replied, stifling a yawn. "But that is because you are a slave to words. If you called that plant an animal, you would find its occupation perfectly natural and pleasing. And why should you not call it an animal?" "I am quite aware of that. As long as I remain in the Ifton Marest, I shall go on listening to this sort of language." Doesn't seem that he quite understood her point, although, I mean, she's right. He's just assuming that, like, because it looks like a plant, it must be a plant, but, like, if you just look at what they're doing, well, maybe this so-called plant is just actually an animal. And so it's basically it's not really a reversal of a role. It's an animal playing with another animal. It's just like the same thing, a mouse being played with a cat, the cat's being played by the tree, which isn't a tree. They trudged along for an hour or more without talking. The day became overcast. A thin mist began to shroud the landscape, and the sun changed into an immense ruddy disk which could be stared at without flinching. A chill, damp wind blew against them. Presently it grew still darker. The sun disappeared, and, glancing first at his companion and then at himself, Maskell noticed that their skin and clothing were coated by a kind of green hoarfrost. The land was now completely solid. About half a mile in front of them, against a background of dark fog, a moving forest of tall waterspouts gyrated slowly and gracefully hither and thither. They were green and self-luminous, and looked terrifying. Tiedemann explained that they were not waterspouts at all, but mobile columns of lightning. "Then they are dangerous?" "So we think," she answered, watching them closely. "Someone is wandering there who appears to have a different opinion." Among the spouts, and entirely encompassed by them, a man was walking with a slow, calm, composed gait, his back turned toward Maskell and Tiedemann. There was something unusual in his appearance. His form looked extraordinarily distinct, solid, and real. "If there's danger, he ought to be warned," said Maskell. "He who is always anxious to teach will learn nothing," returned the woman coolly. She restrained Maskell by a pressure of the arm and continued to watch. Wise words. He who is always anxious to teach will learn nothing. People should heed that. In like this sense, like Maskell's worries are like he doesn't know what's up with this world. He doesn't know what's up with these people. But he still wants to intervene. But if you intervene before you just look at how things are and let them be, you don't get to really find out, how things are and like how things actually work. He thinks the guy seems to like not know that these are dangerous. But he doesn't know that the guy doesn't know, or he doesn't really know if they are or not. I mean, Taidaman says, well, we just assume they're dangerous. We don't know. We don't want to try it. So the base of one of the columns touched the man. He remained unharmed, but turned sharply around, as if for the first time made aware of the proximity of these deadly waltzers. Then he raised himself to his full height and stretched both arms aloft above his head like a diver. He seemed to be addressing the columns. While they looked on, the electric spouts discharged themselves with a series of loud explosions. The stranger stood alone, uninjured. He dropped his arms. The next moment he caught sight of the two and stood still, waiting for them to come up. The pictorial clarity of his person grew more and more noticeable as they approached. His body seemed to be composed of some substance heavier and denser than solid matter. Taidaman looked perplexed. He must be a Sandman. I have seen no one quite like him before. This is a day of days for me. He must be an individual of great importance, murmured Maskell. They now came up to him. He was tall, strong, and bearded, and was clothed in a shirt and breeches of skin. Since turning his back to the wind, the green deposit on his face and limbs had changed to streaming moisture, through which his natural color was visible. It was that of pale iron. There was no third arm. His face was harsh and frowning, and a projecting chin pushed the beard forward. On his forehead there were two flat membranes, like rudimentary eyes, but no zorb. These membranes were expressionless, but in some strange way seemed to add vigor to the stern eyes underneath. When his glance rested on Maskell, the latter felt as though his brain were being thoroughly traveled through. The man was middle-aged. What is that, 40s?
Yeah.
What do they think about it? Like 30s back then?
Mid-30s to, 40s.
Yeah, 30s.
Probably at this time.
Let's see. It's about 15 years. No, 3 years for... Was it? Okay. Do you remember how much it was? Was it like 5 years every year? Or was it like 3? God, I forget.
For what now?
Like for like their time. So if he's middle age and he looks like 40s,
right.
The guy's they surely like in our own time scale, like in his hundreds.
Yeah, probably about 150 something.
Yeah.
Isn't it 3 times or?
Yeah, I forget.
Yeah.
5. It might be 3. So yeah, he might be like close to 100. So anyways, interesting thing. Pale iron skin. He looks more solid than solid matter, more dense than actual matter. The reason I think that this description is this way, like this guy, well, once he gets talking, he is like fully grounded in himself. He knows exactly who he is. He knows exactly what he's doing. Like he is a fully substantial person, at least in his own way, in a way that like nobody else prior has been. Like the people of Sant are not at all confused about anything. Like they are steadfast. And like also it's, I think meaningful about the solidity, the substantiality of their principles. Like these people, like, are one-track minds with no compromise of principles. And in a world of, well, ideals and spirituality, ideal principles are the most real thing. So the fact that, like, he said looks more solid than solid goes quite well with that. It's a pretty good symbolic metaphor. Seems he's also psychic, but then who the hell in this planet isn't apparent so far? His face, like the description of his chin, reminds me of Eustace from Curse the Cowardly Dog, if you know who that is. And his face was harsh and frowning, so yeah, it definitely reminds me of Eustace. But he has a beard. Or if you want somebody kind of realistic, might have like the face of an Abraham Lincoln, just more stern and a bit more chiseled. So his physical distinctness transcended nature. By contrast with him, every object in the neighborhood looked vague and blurred. Taidamon's person suddenly appeared faint, sketch-like, without significance, and Maskell realized that it was no better with himself. A queer, quickening fire began running through his veins. Now, this is interesting. I think like this is just the usual effects of other entities and geographies and people having an effect on Maskell. Because, he says initially he just views him as like, well, he's more solid, but not only is he more solid, now that he looks at himself, he doesn't seem as solid as he used to seem. And I think this is also quite fitting as to like how people react to people with this kind of like character and demeanor. When you meet somebody who really has conviction, unlike you, you certainly see how shaky you actually are as a person. So he says, he turned to the woman. If this man is going to Sant, I shall bear him company. We can now part. No doubt you will think it high time. Let Taidomen come too. The words were delivered in a rough, foreign tongue, but were as intelligible to Maskell as if spoken in English. You who know my name and also my sex, said Taidomen quietly. It is death for me to enter Sant. That is the old law. I am the bearer of the new law. Is it so? And will it be accepted? The old skin is cracking. The new skin has been silently forming underneath. The moment of sloughing has arrived. The storm gathered. The green snow drove against them as they stood talking, and it grew intensely cold. None noticed it. What is your name? Asked Maskell with a beating heart. My name, Maskell, is Spade Evil. You, a voyager across the dark ocean of space, shall be my first witness and follower. You, Taidamen, a daughter of the despised sex, shall be my second. The new law? But what is it? Until eye sees, of what use is it for ear to hear? Come, both of you, to me. Taidamen went to him unhesitatingly. Spade Devil. Okay, just comment on his name. It could go both ways, and I like both ways. It could be Spade Evil. In the sense of like spade, like spaying your dog, spaying evil, which he does. That's certainly what the people of Sant do.
Yeah.
It could be Spa Devil. Later on, this story, well, this chapter kind of, not this chapter, the next one, uh, ends a little bit with an encounter at a spa. Is he a devil? Well, he's perceived as a devil. The devil is clever, and he is clever, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, in the Gnostic sense, the devil is actually good. Well, at least what people call the devil is actually good. The
Good,
snake.
not evil. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it's good. Well, okay. I guess it is good.
Well, good in that
Yeah.
the snake gave us knowledge, and so
Right.
at least the
But
Gnostic view.
that knowledge is not necessary. It's ultimately good from our perspective. Now that we have knowledge, we acknowledge that we would want it, rather than not have it. But they were perfectly fine beforehand because they didn't have knowledge.
Yep.
So it's about your perspective about what you think. Well, okay, I guess there is an objective thing too, but it's more complicated than just good or evil, I would say.
Yeah, the spade also like a shovel. The people of Sant, and he particularly dig down into the truth, and that's what he's been doing. And I think that's actually the truest meaning of his name. That spade evil, like he digs down into the evil of this world. He's found out what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, evil and vil, like the end of his name, vil, both mean wicked. So it could be Spadeville, or Spade Evil, or Spadeville, Spadevil, whatever you want to call him. What are we going to call him?
Spade Devil.
Spade Devil.
So Taidamen went to him unhesitatingly. Spade Devil pressed his hand on her sword and kept it there for a few minutes, while he closed his own eyes. When he removed it, Maskell observed that the sword was transformed into twin membranes like Spade Evil's own. Taidamen looked dazed. She glanced quietly about for a little while, apparently testing her new faculty. Then the tears started to her eyes, and snatching up Spade Devil's hands, she bent over and kissed it hurriedly many times. "My past has been bad," she said. "Numbers have received harm from me, and none good. I have killed, and worse. But now I can throw all that away and laugh. Nothing can now injure me. Oh, Maskell, you and I have been fools together." "Don't you repent for your crimes?" asked Maskell. "Leave the past alone," said Spade Devil. "It cannot be reshaped. The future alone is ours. It starts fresh and clean from this very minute. Why do you hesitate, Maskell? Are you afraid?" "What is the name of those organs, and what is their function?" "They are probes, and they are the gates opening into a new world." Maskell lingered no longer, but permitted Spade Devil to cover his sword. While the iron hand was still pressing his forehead, the new law quietly flowed into his consciousness, like a smooth running stream of clean water which had hitherto been dammed by his obstructive will. The law was duty. So, interesting.
Yeah, especially when he says, "Leave the past alone, it cannot be reshaped." The god of this world, as we know, is shaping.
Mm-hmm.
And things being shaped are... Since this is a new planet, things are kind of loose. I mean, as we've seen, the plants are not they don't have a definite form. They're kind of loose.
Yep.
Yeah, things being shaped are like being shaped toward definition. The past is already shaped. It can't be reshaped. You can't change what has happened even here. So that correlates with our world too.
Yeah. Let's see what probes do. Apparently, testing she banned transform into twin membranes like space devils. So they're probes. Well, it's going to describe right now what they do. So
yeah, what's a probe? Do you know? Not you, but like if the audience doesn't know what a probe is, probably worth explaining.
Well, probe is what is it? Well, when you're probing for something, it's some kind of like way in which you're looking at things, particularly trying to get at what they are, reach out and somehow perceive them.
Since the people watching this are likely either going to be philosophically minded or just stumble upon this because they're interested in sci-fi and haven't read it. A probe is something that scouts out what is not known. Like this probe droid in Star Wars.
Yeah. But these do not probe in a physical sense, they probe in a spiritual sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but the concept is the same.
Yep. So let's see. Maskell found that his new organs had no independent function of their own, but only intensified and altered his other senses. When he used his eyes, ears, or nostrils, the same objects presented themselves to him, but his judgment concerning them was different. Previously, all external things had existed for him. Now he existed for them. According to whether they served his purpose, or were in harmony with his nature, or otherwise, they had been pleasant or painful. Now these words, pleasure and pain, simply had no meaning. So that's what they do. So while, when he had the Magan, and what is it, I forget what the poin, I think that's, no, the points were on the side of his neck, and he had this other thing in the center, I forget what it was called. And that thing allowed him to perceive the ways in which, one, it gave him telepathy. Two, it gave him the capacity to perceive the internal relationships which unified things. Like, I remember, like, he had the one thing where, like, he looked at some flowers and he could, like, literally, like, understand the flowers that were calling towards these other animals that were, like, pollinators or something, and they were like, to me. So, that went along that way. With the thing of the Magan, as he described, with the Sorb, he perceived things, but only as they related to his will, according to how they served his purpose or in harmony with his nature, or otherwise they had been pleasant or painful. But with probes, it's not self-centered. It's not particularly centered on the intuitive relationship of things in a form of like intuitive love. Here it's just a pure kind of understanding, duty, which just have to do with, well, like, this clearly, it is clear referring to Kantianism. Although if you don't know Kantianism, don't worry, you're not missing out on anything, because it's pretty straightforward what this is anyways. It just gives you a little bit more background. So the fact that it's two, the sense of Kantianism is like the ontology, where really it's just an identity check. So long as you can make A equal A, you need that's all you really need to check whether something is right to do or wrong to do. And you do things only because of duty. So the other two watched him while he was making himself acquainted with his new mental outlook. He smiled at them. "You were right, Taidaman," he said in a bold, cheerful voice. "We have been fools, so near the light all the time, and we never guessed it. Always buried in the past or future, systematically ignoring the present, and now it turns out that apart from the present, we have no life at all." "Thanks, Spade Devil, for it," she answered, more loudly than usual. Maskell looked at the man's dark, concrete form. "Spade Devil, now I mean to follow you to the end. I can do nothing less." The severe face showed no sign of gratification. Not a muscle relaxed. "Watch that you don't lose your gift," he said gruffly. Taidaman spoke. "You promised that I should enter Sant with you." "Attach yourself to the truth, not to me. For I may die before you, but the truth will accompany you to your death. However, now let us journey together, all three of us." The words had not left his mouth before he put his face against the fine driving snow and pressed onward toward his destination. He walked with a long stride. Taidaman was obliged to half run in order to keep up with him. The three traveled abreast, Spade Devil in the middle. The fog was so dense that it was impossible to see 100 yards ahead. The ground was covered by the green snow. The wind blew in gusts from the Sant highlands and was piercingly cold. "Spade Devil, are you a man or more than a man?" asked Maskell. "He that is not more than a man is nothing." "Where have you now come from?" "From brooding, Maskell. Out of no other mother can truth be born. I have brooded and rejected, and I have brooded again. Now, after many months, absent from Sant, the truth that last shines forth from me in its simple splendor, like an upturned diamond." "I see it shining," said Maskell. "But how much does it owe to ancient Hator?" "Knowledge has its seasons. The blossom was to Hator, the fruit is to me. Hator was also a brooder. But now his followers do not brood. In Sant all is icy selfishness, a living death. They hate pleasure, and this hatred is the greatest pleasure to them." "But in what way have they fallen off from Hator's doctrines?" "For him, in his sullen purity of nature, all the world was a snare, a limed twig. Knowing that pleasure was everywhere a fierce, mocking enemy, crouching and waiting at every corner of the road of life, in order to kill with its sweet sting the naked grandeur of the soul, he shielded himself behind pain. This also his followers do, but they do not do it for the sake of the soul, but for the sake of vanity and pride." "What is the Trifork?" "The stem, Maskell, is hatred of pleasure. The first fork is disentanglement from the sweetness of the world. The second fork is power over those who still writhe in the nets of illusion. The third fork is the healthy glow of one who steps into ice-cold water." "From what land did Hator come?" "It is not said. He lived in Ifton for a while. There are many legends told of him while there." "We have a long way to go," said Taidaman. "Relate some of those legends, Spade Devil." The snow had ceased, the day brightened, Branchspill reappeared like a phantom sun, but bitter blasts of wind still swept over the plain. So let me just go back a little bit. So when he asks him, "Are you a man or more than a man?" the Spade Devil answers, "He that is not more than a man is nothing." I think the meaning of that regards the physicality of man. That, if by man all you mean is the animal body, spiritually you're nothing. And all that counts in this world is ultimately the spirit. Stuff about brooding, very much related to the Gnostics. The Gnostics valued knowledge immensely. You didn't get to just free yourself from the material prison of the demiurge. This only happened upon acquiring knowledge, and once you freed yourself from this world, you basically entered into the purely intelligible world, which has infinite knowledge. The thing about the blossom was to Hathor, the fruit is to me. Hathor was also a brooder, but not his follower. Now his followers do not brood. In Sant, all is icy selfishness, a living death. They hate pleasure, and this hatred of pleasure is the greatest pleasure to them. This can be said just about like literally any founder of anything. The founder really believes what it is that they put forth. They know what they put forth, and then things become ossified through the repetition of doctrines and things, and ultimately since people don't come from the same background that requires you to develop an understanding of why something is an answer to a problem, because you don't have that problem, but nonetheless you have the answer. People stop brooding. People stop thinking. Himmick's his explanation is pretty clear about what makes him say that the current followers of Hathor are wrong. Hathor used pain as a as a tool for gaining his freedom of the soul. His followers don't know anything about the soul. They literally just take pride in pain. It's a vanity. It's something that, other people can't do. Other people don't have the will to do it, but I have the will to do it, and I can do it. And that itself is a moment of pride and pleasure. And of course, it's been already stated that shaping crystal men uses pleasure as the carrot on the stick to keep you trapped in this world. The explanation of the Trifork, pretty straightforward. The stem, hatred of pleasure. First fork, disentanglement from the sweetness of the world. The second fork is power over those who still writhe in nets of illusion. The third fork is the healthy glow of one who steps into ice-cold water. And, let's get on with the legends of Hathor. In those days, said Spade Devil, there existed in Ifton a mountain island separated by wide spaces from the land around it. A handsome girl, who knew sorcery, caused a bridge to be constructed across which men and women might pass to it. Having by a false tale drawn Hathor onto this rock, she pushed at the bridge with her foot until it tumbled into the depths below. You and I, Hathor, are now together, and there is no means of separating. I wish to see how long the famous frostman can withstand the breath, smiles, and perfume of a girl. Hathor said no word, either then or all that day. He stood till sunset like a tree trunk, and thought of other things. Then the girl grew passionate and shook her curls. She rose from where she was sitting. She looked at him and touched his arm, but he did not see her. She looked at him so that all the soul was in her eyes, and then she fell down dead. Hathor awoke from his thoughts and saw her lying, still warm at his feet, a corpse. He passed to the mainland, but how, it is not related. Taidamen shuddered. You too have met your wicked woman, Spade Devil, but your method is a nobler one. Don't pity other women, said Spade Devil, but love the right. Hathor also once conversed with Shaping. With the maker of the world, said Maskell thoughtfully. With the maker of pleasure. It is told how Shaping defended his world and tried to force Hathor to acknowledge loveliness and joy. But Hathor answered all his marvelous speeches in a few concise iron words, and showed how this joy and beauty was but another name for the bestiality of souls wallowing in luxury and sloth. Shaping smiled and said, How comes it that your wisdom is greater than that of the Master of Wisdom? Hathor said, My wisdom does not come from you, nor from your world, but from that other world, which you, Shaping, have vainly tried to imitate. Shaping replied, What then do you do in my world? Hathor said, I am here falsely, and therefore I am subject to your false pleasures. But I wrap myself in pain, not because it is good, but because I wish to keep myself as far from you as possible. For pain is not yours, neither does it belong to the other world, but it is the shadow cast by your false pleasures. Shaping then said, What is this faraway other world of which you say, this is so, this is not so? How happens it that you alone of all my creatures have knowledge of it? But Hathor spat at his feet and said, You lie, Shaping. All have knowledge of it. You, with your pretty toys, alone obscured from our view. Shaping asked, What then am I? Hathor answered, You are the dreamer of impossible dreams. And then the story goes that Shaping departed, ill-pleased with what had been said. What other world did Hathor refer to? Asked Maskell. One where grandeur reigns, Maskell, just as pleasure reigns here. Whether grandeur or pleasure, it makes no difference, said Maskell. The individual spirit that lives and wishes to live is mean and corrupt-natured. Guard you your pride, returned Spade-Devil. Do not make law for the universe and for all time, but for yourself and for this small, false life of yours. In what shape did death come to that hard, unconquerable man? Asked Tydomin. He lived to be old, but went upright and free-limbed to his last hour. When he saw that death could not be staved off longer, he determined to destroy himself. He gathered his friends around him, not from vanity, but so that they might see to what lengths the human soul can go in its perpetual warfare with the voluptuous body. Standing erect, without support, he died by withholding his breath. A silence followed which lasted for perhaps an hour. Their minds refused to acknowledge the icy winds, but the current of their thoughts became frozen. So let's see. So the story of the girl that tried to seduce Hathor, I think, kind of explains why they hate women and why women are not allowed. Doesn't seem to be necessarily because they have an understanding of like something metaphysically wrong with femininity, although they do. It is already like made clear, I think, up to this point, and it becomes clear onward. Sweetness, beauty, pleasure, love, all these things, which are historically connected with femininity in concept, obviously then are connected to the female sex. So women are seen as metaphysically inferior and as, even in their most noblest aspect, not quite leading you to the truth. So you can see how, like, these, on the level of these saints, you know, they would see women as a snare, even on the minimal way, like just love. Love attaches you to this world. You don't want to be attached to this world. You don't want to be attached to anything here. So if love did that to you, and love was something that was brought upon by the other sex in contact with you, you would just want to stay away from that. The thing about the discussion was shaping. It's interesting. He says, my wisdom does not come from you nor from your world, but from that other world which you shaping had vainly tried to imitate. Absolutely the demiurge story.
Mm-hmm.
Hador asks, Shaping asks him, what then do you do in my world? And he says, I am here falsely, and therefore I am subject to your false pleasures, but I wrap myself in pain, not because it is good, but because I wish to keep myself as far from you as possible. For pain is not yours, neither does it belong to the world, but is the shadow cast by your false pleasures. So it's already been strongly intimated that Crag is clearly in this world and on Earth when he met Maskell. Crag appears as something ugly, something antithetical to everything that people find, pleasurable. He's painful in just about every way. But Crag is connected to these. Crag is connected to Surtur, and Surtur is. I'll go ahead and mention it because it's going to be mentioned like in this chapter, anyways. It's going to be revealed that Surtur is not, in fact, Crystalman at all. This thing that other people have been telling him is literally confusion, and confusion that works in the favor of Crystalman, of shaping. Why would they want to do that? Because in the spiritual domain, if you know anything about the esoteric stuff, names and intentionality have power.
Yep.
So if shaping can get people to believe that he is Surtur, anytime anybody might invoke Surtur, if they believe that their intention is going towards shaping, it empowers shaping. Which is why, in the history of religions, you find that gods poach names and titles a lot. It's something very interesting. If you don't know about it, you should really look into it. This was well known even by the time, it was well known even about 2,500 years ago.
Yeah, the church fathers talk about it for sure. But yeah, even before that.
The Egyptians knew, the Greeks knew.
The Greeks acknowledged, yeah.
And they all knew, like, oh, you guys have this god, like, oh, but this god is really this other god that we had. And then some people like, no, that, actually this god is like that other god. And there was a struggle to, like, order names in a certain way. Yeah, who was who, to figure out who you were actually worshiping.
Yes. And a lot of them got flipped. I'll just say that.
Yeah. So, in flipped entirely in that, like here, like if Surtur is like perhaps the god of another world or some kind of being from another world that is not subject to Shaping's power, and Shaping wants to take on that name because that being from the other world, which here Hador has said explicitly, that world. This world is false, that world is the true world. So Surtur must be actually greater than Shaping. So Shaping wants to present it like himself, as God themselves. But Shaping is not God. Shaping is just a lower being, They're aping God.
It's like, I got a delivery here for Surtur. Oh, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because Maskell originally says, like, oh, with the maker of the world, when he says, Hador talked to Shaping, and Spade immediately answers, not with the, he says the maker of pleasure, not the maker of the world. So anyways, my point was, Crag is from the other world. Crag is related to the world that Surtur is from. So that's why Crag, the way Crag appears in this world, is as the shadow of the world itself, as pain. But that also is what starts to complicate the notion of what is this world and what relationship does one really have to it. Let's see, the whole thing, Shaping asks, what them am I? Hador answered, you are the dreamer of impossible dreams. Which is another thing of saying you are a fake god, all the things that you make aren't real. You can pretend, but that doesn't make it any ultimately real. The description of the other world. What other world did Hator refer to? Asked Maskell. One where grandeur reigns, Maskell, just as pleasure reigns here. Not quite sure what that's supposed. Well, I do get some.
Well, I mean, grandeur is not just an abstract thing like pleasure. Pleasure can be detrimental to you, if you just seek pleasure. But grandeur is like actual fulfillment, actual splendor. So he has delusions of grandeur, and he creates illusions of grandeur, which are not real.
Yeah, like it's meaningful, but like I don't know if the average person like gets an intuition of what that actually like is. It's it is like initially more abstract than pleasure.
Oh, you think we should save it for later?
No, just like I'm just saying that the word grandeur, like it's hard to like say what that's supposed to be like intuited as.
Oh,
So you take like the definition of the dictionary. Apparently, it's splendor and impressiveness, especially the appearance or style. Well, there's many, but
yeah, that's a shallow definition, in my opinion. Not really what it's talking about here, like a true majesty.
Yeah. But even then, like saying like it's just like true majesty, like it's still too abstract. It's like, well, what is that supposed to be intuited as? Like, what is that actually like supposed to be? To me, it's just like
the glory of fulfillment. I don't know, like
the
highest thing.
Yeah, it's just like real being, really. Like when people talk about enlightenment, light is a metaphor for the insight of intuitive knowing and the substantiality of truth. And whatever this other world is, one, it is the real world as opposed to this fake world. Everything is grand in that it's more real. Like compared to this world, it's grand. It's real grandeur. The thing where it says, Maskell responds, whether grandeur or pleasure, it makes no difference. The individual spirit that lives and wishes to live is mean and corrupt-natured. This shows that he's still under a little bit of the influence of Joywind and Tydamon's whole thing about sacrifice. Because when he met Joywind, they had a discussion, and one of the things that she mentioned was that the greatest act of love is sacrifice. And that she wished that she would be worthy of meeting Shaping one day, by having a sacrifice worthy of meeting of him, like showing himself. And then with the discussion of Taidomen, it was, even though she was manipulating him, like Maskell was going on about how, the purpose of life was to do something so magnanimous, a sacrifice so great that, even fate would be astonished with us. But the point of the spiritual journey isn't to commit sacrifice. Your own life is definitely part of the purpose of why you are. So Spade Devil says, guard your pride. Do not make law for the universe and for all time, but for yourself and for this small false life of yours. Which is interesting because anybody who... So you might have seen the whole thing at the beginning on duty. And if you're somewhat philosophically knowledgeable, you saw the connection to Kant. I mentioned it myself. This, however, is completely anti-Kantian. Do not make law for the universe and for all time, but for yourself and for this small false life of yours. Because the usual way that people interpret Kant, it's everything's universal, categorical imperatives. If what's right is always right for everybody at all times in all circumstances. And Spade Devil is saying, no, you don't get to make law for the universe and for all time. There's what's right for you, what's right now in your conditions. But, even if the conditions are the same, somebody else may themselves be different, such that what's right is different for them. And I think that's ultimately a truer position than Kantian positions. So let's see. A silence followed, which lasted for perhaps an hour. Their minds refused to acknowledge the icy winds, but the current of their thoughts became frozen. So, yet again, one of those things in which the outer world and the inner world are mirrored, deeply connected. When Branch Spell, however, shone out again, though with subdued power, Maskell's curiosity rose once more. Your fellow countrymen, then, Spade Devil, are sick with self-love? The men of other countries, said Spade Devil, are the slaves of pleasure and desire, knowing it. But the men of my country are the slaves of pleasure and desire, not knowing it. And yet that proud pleasure, which rejoices in self-torture, has something noble in it. He who studies himself at all is ignoble. Only by despising soul as well as body can a man enter into true life. On what grounds do they reject woman? Inasmuch as a woman has ideal love and cannot live for herself, love for another is pleasure for the loved one and therefore injurious to him. So interesting, yeah. The issues, self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice and pleasure. A forest of false ideas is waiting for your axe, said Maskell. But will they allow it? Spade Devil knows, Maskell, said Taidomen, that be it today or be it tomorrow, love can't be kept out of a land, even by the disciples of Hathor. Beware of love. Beware of emotion, exclaimed Spade Devil. Love is but pleasure once removed. Think not of pleasing others, but of serving them. Forgive me, Spade Devil, if I am still feminine. Right has no sex. So long, Taidomen, as you remember that you are a woman, so long you will not enter into divine apathy of soul. But where there are no women, there are no children, said Maskell. How came there to be all these generations of Hathor men? Life breeds passion, passion breeds suffering, suffering breeds the yearning for relief from suffering. Men throng to Sant from all parts in order to have the scars of their souls healed. In place of hatred of pleasure, which all can understand, what simple formula do you offer? Iron obedience to duty, answered Spay Devil. And if they ask, how far is this consistent with hatred of pleasure? What will your pronouncement be? I do not answer them, but I answer you, Maskell, who asked the question. Hatred is passion, and all passion springs from the dark fires of self. Do not hate pleasure at all, but pass it by on one side, calm and undisturbed. What is the criterion of pleasure? How can we always recognize it in order to avoid it? Rigidly follow duty, and such questions will not arise. Later in the afternoon, Tydaman timidly placed her fingers on Spay Devil's arm. Fearful doubts are in my mind, she said. This expedition to Sant may turn out badly. I have seen a vision of you, Spay Devil, and myself lying dead and covered in blood, but Maskell was not there. We may drop the torch, but it will not be extinguished, and others will raise it. Show me a sign that you are not as other men, so that I may know that our blood will not be wasted. Spay Devil regarded her sternly. I am not a magician. I don't persuade the senses, but the soul. Does your duty call you to Sant, Tydaman? Then go there. Does it not call you to Sant? Then go no farther. Is not this simple? What signs are necessary? Did I not see you dispel those spouts of lightning? No common man could have done that. Who knows what any man can do? This man can do one thing, that man can do another. But what all men can do is their duty, and to open their eyes to this, I must go to Sant, and if necessary lay down my life. Will you not still accompany me? Yes, said Tydaman. I will follow you to the end. It is all the more essential, because I keep on displeasing you with my remarks, and that means I have not yet learned my lesson properly. Do not be humble, for humility is only self-judgment, and while we are thinking of self, we must be neglecting some action we could be planning or shaping in our mind. Tydaman continued to be uneasy and preoccupied. Why was Maskell not in the picture? She asked. You dwell on this foreboding because you imagine it as tragical. There is nothing tragical in death, Tydaman, nor in life. There is only right and wrong. What arises from right or wrong action does not matter. We are not gods constructing a world, but simple men and women, doing our immediate duty. We may die in Sant. So you have seen it, but the truth will go on living. Spay Devil, why do you choose Sant to start your work? No. Spay Devil, why do you choose Sant to start your work in? Asked Maskell. These men with fixed ideas seem to me the least likely of any to follow any new light. Where a bad tree thrives, a good tree will flourish. But where no tree at all can be found, nothing will grow. I understand you, said Maskell. Here perhaps we are going to martyrdom, but elsewhere we should resemble men preaching to cattle. Pretty true. Let's see. Just going back a little bit, see if there was anything worth commenting on. Yeah, nothing. Although this is actually a good one. Where he's going to what seems to be the most stubborn place of people who have made up minds on everything. And Maskell asks the obvious question: well, why the hell would you go there? I mean, it seems like people there are going to be the last people to listen to you. And the answer, where a bad tree thrives, bad tree thrives. A good tree will flourish, but where no tree at all can be found, nothing will grow. That is absolutely true. People who want to change the world ought to take that seriously. Which is also why you don't want to popularize shit. Popularizing shit is about making it easy, to making it accessible without a person having to commit to anything. Well, what is grasped easily is also let go easily. That is just the way that we emotionally seem to function. And it's not that, things should be hard just to be for difficulty's sake, yeah. But it is that, there are things that are simple, yes, but there are things that are deceptively simple, and everything that's worth anything, it has simple parts to it, yes, but those parts are deceptively simple because they come along with the rest of the system of understanding or the things that you have to do with life.
Good art is not easy.
Yeah, good art's not easy. Good thinking is not easy. Finding people who are committed is not easy. Your time is better spent, for example, arguing back and forth with somebody who's really stubborn but passionate about a topic than with somebody who doesn't know anything about this topic, doesn't care about it, and will just go, yeah, sure, whatever. 20 things you say.
Yeah, you want to be rewarded for your dedication, not just dedicate yourself to something aimlessly.
So that's partly why I don't bother popularizing any of the things that I do. If you look at the people who are popular, the people that follow them aren't worth anything.
Yeah, they appeal to the lowest common denominator, obviously. Usually teenagers, if you're talking about YouTube or whatever.
Teens, tweens. People who aren't serious about anything.
The uninitiated, as I call them.
Yeah, the thing is that they're not serious about anything.
Yeah.
You want people who... Perhaps serious is not the right word. Sincerity. Like, you have to be sincere at the very least.
Sincere and interested.
So, let's continue. Shortly before sunset, they arrived at the extremity of the upland plain above which towered the black cliffs of the sand levels. A dizzy, artificially constructed staircase of more than 1,000 steps of varying depth, twisting and forking in order to conform to the angles of the precipices, led to the world overhead. In the place where they stood, they were sheltered from the cutting winds. Branch spell radiantly shining at last, but on the point of sinking, filled the cloudy sky with violent, lurid colors, some of the combinations of which were new to Maskell. The circle of the horizon was so gigantic that had he been suddenly carried back to earth, he would by comparison have fancied himself to be moving beneath the dome of some little closed-in cathedral. He realized that he was on a foreign planet, but he was not stirred or uplifted by the knowledge. He was conscious only of moral ideas. Looking backward, he saw the plain, which for several miles past had been without vegetation, stretching back away to Discorn. So regular had been the ascent, and so great was the distance, that the huge pyramid looked nothing more than a slight swelling on the face of the earth. So Torments is big. And goddamn, he's traveled quite a bit. Man, the first day he walked 40 miles. Actually ended up walking way more. I think he walked something like 60 miles. Here he's walked at least about as much. Spade Devil stopped and gazed over the landscape in silence. In the evening sunlight his form looked more dense, dark, and real than ever before. His features were set hard in grimness. That's very fitting. Evening, the day is reaching its end. Spade Devil has already been told about the premonition that he's probably going to be killed. And when a person of principle gets to the point of life or death on that principle, the principle becomes even more rigid, more steadfast. So it makes sense that as evening is coming along, he's starting to become more dense, more dark, more real than ever before. He turned around to his companions. "What is the greatest wonder in all this wonderful scene?" he demanded. "Acquaint us," said Maskell. "All that you see is born from pleasure and moves on from pleasure to pleasure. Nowhere is right to be found. It is Shaping's world." "There is another world. Oh, sorry. There is another wonder," said Tydaman, and she pointed her finger toward the sky overhead. A small cloud, so low down that it was perhaps not more than 500 feet above them, was sailing along in from the dark wall of a cliff. It was in the exact shape of an open human hand, and with downward pointing fingers. It was stained crimson by the sun, and one or two tiny cloudlets beneath the fingers looked like falling drops of blood. "Who can doubt now that our death is close at hand?" said Tydaman. "I have been close to death twice today. The first time I was ready, but now I am more than ready. I am more ready, for I shall die side by side with the man who has given me my first happiness." "Do not think of death, but of right persistence," replied Spade Evil. "I am not here to tremble before Shaping's portents, but to snatch men from him." He at once proceeded to lead the way up the staircase. Tydaman gazed upward after him for a moment with an odd, worshipping light in her eyes. Then she followed him, the second of the party. Maskell climbed at last. He was travel-stained, unkempt, and very tired, but his soul was at peace. As they steadily ascended the almost perpendicular stairs, the sun got higher in the sky. Its light dyed their bodies a ruddy gold. They gained the top. There they found rolling in front of them, as far as the eye could see, a barren desert of white sand, broken here and there by large, jagged masses of black rock. Tracts of the sand were reddened by the sinking sun. The vast expanse of sky was filled by evil-shaped clouds and wild colors. The freezing wind, flurrying across the desert, drove the fine particles of sand painfully against their faces. By the way, it just reminds me of the first time I took mushrooms, I definitely saw some evil-shaped clouds. It's pretty, suffice to say, it's pretty trippy.
Wow. Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I have not taken mushrooms, so I don't know. But yeah.
So let's see. They gained the top.
But what did it? Wait. What did it? Did it? The mushrooms that you, or sorry, the clouds that you saw in the sky were like that, or just produced clouds?
Well, I was high as fuck, so I'm sure the clouds were not having the shapes of fucking skulls and shit.
Okay, all right. I don't know if it turned the clouds to a different shape.
No, yeah, like the clouds certainly looked different shapes to me. I saw skulls, I saw fucking angels and demons.
Interesting.
Yeah, it looked pretty cool, but same like cloud, like it is exactly as he describes. Where like you look at stuff and it affects you in very distinct ways.
Yeah.
So let's see. So they reached the flat, high level of sand. It's a barren desert, white sand, large jagged masses of black rock. Pretty striking. The tracts of sand were reddened by the sinking sun. Two evil-shaped clouds in wild colors. Oh, it's a holy place, strangely, but it's a holy place against Shaping. So the fact that the sky is filled with all these evil portents and things makes perfect sense. Shaping probably hates this place quite a lot. It's still cold, but it's not snowing anymore. drove the fine particles of sand painfully against their faces. So it makes sense that a guy who wanted to shroud himself in pain to keep himself away from being tricked by the pleasures of shaping would found like the center of his activities and institutionalize a place which just fucking sucks. So it's got to be a shitty place so you can be surrounded in just natural pain. Where now do you take us? Asked Maskell. He who guards the old wisdom of Sant must give up that wisdom to me, that I may change it. What he says, others will say. I go to find Mulger. And where will you seek him in this bare country? Spade Evil struck off toward the north unhesitatingly. It is not so far, he said. It is his custom to be in that part where Sant overhangs the Womb-Flash forest. Perhaps he will be there, but I cannot say. So Mulger. So I think it's like maul, like a maul or mauling. Maul, wound, wound by scratching or tearing.
Yeah, like a bear mauls people.
Yeah. Gur. Mulger. Would have something to do with... what word would that be combining with? Augur. Could that be some kind of relation to like the augur?
Maybe. Yeah, that's the only thing I was thinking. Augur. But augur. Is with a U instead of an E. Augur.
Yeah, but then like he's also does some stuff where the way it sounds, like all pain, for example.
Yeah.
Augur. Well, augur is a tool, bores into things. I thought it was something else for like augury, but that's probably not related. Yeah, Mulger.
Oh, you're talking about the tool auger.
Yeah, auger.
Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe it is that.
Which would make sense. I mean, it's very fitting. That's, yet again, going down into the depths of this world and finding out what it is.
Yeah.
And where will you seek him in this country? So Maskell glanced toward Tydaman. Her sunken cheeks and the dark circles beneath her eyes told of her extreme weariness. The woman is tired, Spade Devil, he said. She smiled. It's but another step into the land of death. I can manage it. Give me your arm, Maskell. He put his arm around her waist and supported her along that way. The sun is now sinking, said Maskell. Will we get there before dark? Fear nothing, Maskell and Tydaman. This pain is eating up the evil in your nature. The road you are walking cannot remain unwalked. We shall arrive before dark. All right. So they set out right after Blood Somber, which lasts about 4 hours. And the day's about, about 48 hours. So they've been walking for like 10 hours. Like, he's walked basically 20 hours this day. The sun then disappeared behind the far distant ridges that formed the western boundary of the Ifton Morass. The sky blazed up into more vivid colors. The wind grew colder. It's actually fitting, the one's coming night. They're heading towards death. These people are themselves quite frigid in their outlooks. So just another unity of the symbolism of landscapes, the context, and persons, and what they are. So they passed some pools of colorless Nile water, round the banks of which were planted fruit trees. Maskell ate some of the fruit. It was hard, bitter, and astringent. He could not get rid of the taste, but he felt braced and invigorated by the downward flowing juices. No other trees or shrubs were to be seen anywhere. No animals appeared, no birds or insects. It was a desolate land. A mile or two passed when they again approached the edge of the plateau. Far down beneath their feet, the great Wombflash forest began. But daylight had vanished there. Maskell's eyes rested only on a vague darkness. He faintly heard what sounded like the distant sighing of innumerable treetops. In the rapidly darkening twilight, they came abruptly on a man. He was standing in a pool on one leg. A pile of boulders had hidden him from their view. The water came as far up as his calf. A trifork, similar to the one Maskell had seen on Discorn, but smaller, had been stuck in the mud close by his hand. They stopped by the side of the pond and waited. Immediately he became aware of their presence. The man set down his other leg and waded out of the water toward them, picking up his trifork in doing so. "This is not Mauger, but Cat-Ice," said Spade Devil. "Mauger is dead," said Cat-Ice, speaking in the same tongue as Spade Devil, but with an even harsher accent, so that the tympanum of Maskell's ear was affected painfully. The latter saw before him a bowed, powerful individual, advanced in years. He wore nothing but a scanty loincloth. His trunk was long and heavy, but his legs were rather short. His face was beardless, lemon-colored, and anxious-looking. It was disfigured by a number of longitudinal ruts, a quarter of an inch deep, the cavities of which seemed clogged with ancient dirt. The hair of his head was black and sparse, instead of the twin membranous organs of Spade Devil. He possessed but one, and this was in the center of his brow. Spade Devil's dark, solid person stood out from the rest like a reality among dreams. "Has the trifork passed to you?" he demanded. "Yes. Why have you brought this woman to Sant?" "I have brought another thing to Sant. I have brought the new faith." Cat-Eye stood motionless and looked troubled. "State it." "Shall I speak with many words or few words?" "If you wish to say what is not, many words will not suffice. If you wish to say what is, a few words will be enough." Spade Devil frowned. "To hate pleasure brings pride with it. Pride is a pleasure. To kill pleasure, we must attach ourselves to duty. While the mind is planning right action, it has no time to think of pleasure." "Is that the whole?" asked Cat-Ice. "The truth is simple even for the simplest man." "Do you destroy Hathor and all his generations with a single word?" "I destroy nature and set up law." A long silence followed. "My probe is double," said Spade Devil. "Suffer me to double yours, and you will see as I see." "Come you here, you big man," said Cat-Ice to Maskell. Maskell advanced a step closer. "Do you follow Spade Devil in his new faith?" "As far as death," exclaimed Maskell. Cat-Ice picked up a flint. "With this stone I strike out one of your two probes. When you have but one, you will see with me, and you will recollect with Spade Devil. Choose you then the superior faith, and I shall obey your choice." "Endure this little pain, Maskell, for the sake of future men," said Spade Devil. "The pain is nothing," replied Maskell, "but I fear the result." "Permit me, although I am only a woman, to take his place, Cat-Ice," said Tydomin, stretching out her hand. He struck at it violently with the flint and gashed it from wrist to thumb. The pale carmine blood spouted up. "What brings this kisslubber to Sant?" he said. "How does she presume to make the rules of life for the sons of Hathor?" She bit her lip and sat back. Well then, Maskell, accept. I certainly should not have played false to Spade Devil, but you hardly can. If he bids me, I must do it, said Maskell. But who knows what will come of it? Spade Devil spoke. Of all the descendants of Hathor, Cat Eyes is the most whole-hearted and sincere. He will trample my truth underfoot, thinking me a demon sent by Shaping to destroy the work of this land. But a seed will escape, and my blood and yours, Taidamen, will wash it. Then men will know that my destroying evil is their greatest good. But none here will live to see it. Ooh, yet another meaning to the name Spade Evil. Spade. You dig? You dig the grave of evil. Maskell now went quite close to Cat Eyes and offered his head. Cat Eyes raised his hand and, after holding the flint poised for a moment, brought it down with adroitness and force upon the left-hand probe. Maskell cried out with pain. The blood streamed down, and the function of the organ was destroyed. There was a pause, while he walked to and fro, trying to staunch the blood. What do you feel, Maskell? What do you see? Inquired Taidamen anxiously. He stopped and stared hard at her. I now see straight, he said slowly. What does that mean? He continued to wipe the blood from his forehead. He looked troubled. Henceforth, as long as I live, I shall fight with my nature and refuse to feel pleasure, and I advise you to do the same. Spade Devil gazed at him sternly. Do you renounce my teaching? Maskell, however, returned to the gaze without dismay. Spade Devil's image-like clearness of form had departed for him. His frowning face he knew to be the deceptive portico of a weak and confused intellect. It is false. Is it false to sacrifice oneself for another? Demanded Taidamen. I can't argue as yet, said Maskell. At this point, the world with its sweetness seems to me a sort of charnel house. I feel a loathing for everything in it, including myself. I know no more. Is there no duty? Asked Spade Devil in a harsh tone. It appears to me but a cloak under which we share the pleasure of other people. Taidamen pulled at Spade Devil's arm. Maskell has betrayed you, as he has so many others. Let us go. He stood fast. You have changed quickly, Maskell. Maskell, without answering him, turned to Cat Eyes. Why do men go on living in this soft, shameful world when they can kill themselves? Pain is the native air of Surtur's children. To what other air do you wish to escape? Surtur's children? Is not Surtur Shaping? It is the greatest of lies. It is Shaping's masterpiece. Answer, Maskell, said Spade Devil. Do you repudiate right action? Leave me alone. Go back. I am not thinking of you and your ideas. I wish you no harm. The darkness came on fast. There was another prolonged silence. Cat Eyes threw away the flint and picked up his staff. The woman must return home, he said. She was persuaded here and did not come freely. You, Spade Devil, must die, backslider as you are. Taidamen said quietly, He has no power to enforce this. Are you going to allow the truth to fall to the ground, Spade Devil? It will not perish with by my death, but by my efforts to escape from death. Cat Eyes, I accept your judgment. Taidamen smiled. For my part, I am too tired to walk farther today, so I shall die with him. Cat Eyes said to Maskell, Prove your sincerity. Kill this man and his mistress according to the laws of Hathor. I can't do that. I have traveled in friendship with them. You denied duty. Oh, sorry. You denied duty, and now you must do your duty, said Spade-Devil, calmly stroking his beard. Whatever law you accept, you must obey, without turning to right or left. Your law commands that we must be stoned, and it will soon be dark. Have you not even this amount of manhood? Exclaimed Tydomin. Masco moved heavily. Be my witness, Cat-Eyes, that the thing was forced on me. Ator is looking on and approving, replied Cat-Eyes. Masco then went apart to the pile of boulders scattered by the side of the pool. He glanced about him and selected 2 large fragments of rock, the heaviest that he thought he could carry. With these in his arms, he staggered back. He dropped them on the ground and stood, recovering his breath. When he could speak again, he said, I have a bad heart for the business. Is there no alternative? Sleep here tonight, Spade-Devil. In the morning, go back to where you have come from. No one shall harm you. Spade-Devil's ironic smile was lost in the gloom. Shall I brood again, Masco, for still another year, and after that come back to Sant with other truths? Come, waste no time, but choose the heavier stone for me, for I am stronger than Tydomin. Masco lifted one of the rocks and stepped out 4 full paces. Spade-Devil confronted him, erect, and waited tranquilly. The huge stone hurtled through the air. Its flight looked like a dark shadow. It struck Spade-Devil full in the face, crushing his features and breaking his neck. He died instantaneously. Tydomin looked away from the fallen man. Be very quick, Masco, and don't let me keep him waiting. He panted and raised the second stone. She placed herself in front of Spade-Devil's body and stood there, unsmiling and cold. The blow caught her between her breast and chin, and she fell. Masco went to her, and, kneeling on the ground, half raised her in his arms. There she breathed out her last sighs. After that, he laid her down again and rested heavily on his hands, while he peered into the dead face. The transition from its heroic spiritual expression to the vulgar and grinning mask of Crystalman came like a flash, but he saw it. He stood up in the darkness and pulled Cat-Eyes toward him. Is that the true likeness of shaping? It is shaping stripped of illusion. How comes this horrible world to exist? Cat-Eyes did not answer. Who is Surtur? You will get nearer to him tomorrow, but not here. I am wading through too much blood, said Masco. Nothing good can come of it. Do not fear change and destruction, but laughter and joy. Masco meditated. Tell me, Cat-Eyes, if I had elected to follow Spade-Devil, would you really have accepted his faith? He was a great-souled man, replied Cat-Eyes. I see that the pride of our men is only another sprouting out of pleasure. Tomorrow I too shall leave Sant to reflect on all this. Masco shuddered. Then those 2 deaths were not a necessity, but a crime. His part was played, and henceforward the woman would have dragged down his ideas with her soft love and loyalty. Regret nothing, stranger, but go away at once out of the land. Tonight? Where shall I go? To Wombflash, where you will meet the deepest minds. I will put you on the way. He linked his arm in Masco's, and they walked away into the night. For a mile or more they skirted the edge of the precipice. The wind was searching and drove grit into their faces. Through the rifts of the clouds, stars, faint and brilliant, appeared. Masco saw no familiar constellations. He wondered if the sun of Earth was visible, and if so, which one it was. They came to the head of a rough staircase leading down to the cliffside. It resembled the one by which he had come up, but this descended to the Wombflash forest. That is your path, said Cat-Eyes, and I shall not come any farther. Masco detained him. Say just this before we part company. Why does pleasure appear so shameful to us? Because in feeling pleasure, we forget our home. And that is? Muspel, answered Cat Eyes. Having made this reply, he disengaged himself and, turning his back, disappeared into the darkness. Maskell stumbled down the staircase as best he could. He was tired, but contemptuous of his pains. His uninjured probe began to discharge matter. He lowered himself from step to step during what seemed an interminable time. The rustling and sighing of the trees grew louder as he approached the bottom. The air became still and warm. Inky blackness was all around him. He at last reached level ground. Still attempting to proceed, he began to trip over roots and to collide with tree trunks. After this had happened a few times, he determined to go no farther that night. He heaped together some dry leaves for a pillow and immediately flung himself down to sleep. Deep and heavy unconsciousness seized him almost instantly. All right, so interesting. I think Cat Eye says that Taidaman would have pulled down the legacy of Spay Devil had she lived. I think is unquestionably right. You can already see in the way that she reacted to a lot of things that she did have a change, but the change wasn't as complete as Maskell's. She still was caught up in her prior ways and emotions, and it still tinged her understanding. So despite the fact that Spay Devil had been pretty clear, don't attach yourself to love, don't attach yourself to feeling. He warned against the idea that sacrifice is something to be sought. She repeated that 3 times, even afterwards. That and her vindictive side just came out. Despite sure, fine, she didn't have to regret what she did before. She kind of did, but not really. It was what is it? Spay Devil said well, we can only shape the future, so worry about the future and just live right from now. But she clearly was not going to live much more rightly. She's one of those people who is holier than thou. I mean, she goes the whole thing oh no, Maskell's going to betray you just like he betrayed so many other people, as if she hasn't betrayed other people, and as if she wasn't actively already betraying him by trying to throw him under the bus in front of Spay Devil. So yes. That Cat Eyes understood that Spay Devil was right, at least on the pointing out. Perhaps not on the duty thing. The duty was the positive thing to do, but at least on pointing out that their pride was itself a pleasure, and that they were all ensnared in Shaping's trap, just like everybody else. I think that's just kind of a thing that typically happens, right? A lot of people just won't believe the words, but they will believe the deeds. So I think the fact that both Spay Devil knew that Cat Eyes was really sincere, and that Cat Eyes knew that Spay Devil was really sincere. Seeing him go all the way for this new insight that he had is probably the tipping point that made him realize and open up to the understanding that he was right. Beyond that, I don't really think. I think everything else is kind of pretty straightforward. The fact that Maskell's probe was altered to just be singular. What would I say? And the distinction between the single probe and the double probe. The double probe is like the relationship of duty, which is the understanding of the natures that must intelligibly go together. That you can't go against what you know. And then the singular one is about the perfection of self-identity and self-subsistence in the spiritual level. And these do connect. One of them is singular. One of them requires at least two. So the two probe one is a check between at least the law that you have and, whether something accords with that law, minimally at least. And whereas with a singular one, what you're serving is the law of yourself. It's more abstract than the will in if, done, but still tied to that, tied to the pleasure of pride. And then the double one is decentering yourself into the pure abstract law. This is what... I think this is like at the point... The next one, the Womb Flat Forest, is where Maskell finally comes to the realization that all these different organs and stuff, every time he's had a new one, he's basically under a spell. He's possessed. He's not really like his regular self. So yet again, there's changes so powerful, like they overwhelm his spirit, his mind, and he's completely subsumed under these ideas. Beyond that, nothing else to say. Anything else on your part, Hyperion?
No, we already mentioned Muspel earlier, didn't we? In another part.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned once. And Muspel is also just like Surtur is a name that's related to
Norse mythology.
Norse mythology, yeah. So
Norse cosmology this time. Muspelheim.
Yep. So anyways, chapter 13. I think we're about halfway through the book. At least chapter-wise.
Yeah.
So, yep. For those of you listening, see you around next time.
Later.